Welcome to this deep dive on Beartown. You're interested in small town dynamics, right?
Yeah.
And the intense world of youth sports and all the ethical dilemmas that can just come up.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack all that and more so get ready for a pretty thought-provoking journey, I think.
I'm excited to delve into all of this. I think Beartown, both the place and the book, offer a really fascinating window into how a community grapples with its identity and the consequences that can come with its choices.
Okay, let's set the stage. Beartown is this isolated town practically swallowed by the forest, and it's really struggling to keep its head above water economically.
That isolation, I think it breeds a certain mentality, almost like an us against the world perspective, wouldn't you say? And in that context, hockey, it becomes more than just a sport. It's a symbol of hope, a potential lifeline for a town that has really limited prospects.
Yeah, and the weight of that hope, the pressure to succeed, it's immense, especially for the junior hockey team. It's almost as if the town itself is riding on their success.
Absolutely. The novel really highlights how intertwined the town's economic revival is with the team's performance. The pressure on these young players is extraordinary, going far beyond the typical competitive spirit of sports.
Yeah, it's a lot for anyone to carry, let alone teenagers.
Hmm.
Let's talk about some of these key players. We have Amat, this incredibly dedicated young player working his tail off despite not having the size or strength of some of his teammates.
Amat's drive is fascinating, particularly given his background. I mean, he helps the caretaker at the rink every morning before school just for the chance to be near the ice. It speaks to how much hockey means to him, how it represents a potential escape from his circumstances.
Wow, yeah. And then there's Kevin, the star player that everyone seems to be banking on. He's almost treated like a demigod in Beartown.
The weight of expectation on his shoulders is enormous. He's burdened with not just his own ambitions, but the hopes and dreams of an entire community.
Which can warp your sense of self,
Nice.
for better or for worse. And then we have Benji, fiercely loyal to Kevin, almost blindly so.
Benji's devotion to Kevin illustrates a very particular kind of social bond, I think. It speaks of the power dynamics that can exist within groups, especially in high-pressure environments. His loyalty, while admirable, also raises questions about personal agency and the limits of friendship.
Right, it feels like a ticking time bomb, that level of unwavering loyalty. And then we have Maya, the coach's daughter, who exists somewhat on the fringes of this hockey-obsessed world.
It's important to note that the story is told from multiple perspectives, allowing us to experience the events through each character's eyes. Maya's story, in particular, adds a crucial layer of complexity to our understanding of Beartown. She's navigating adolescence and searching for her own identity in a town that seems to have tunnel vision for hockey.
Yeah, and then everything changes.
Yeah.
This incident at Kevin's party becomes the catalyst that cracks the town's facade wide open.
This incident, the assault on Maya, is deliberately shrouded in ambiguity, initially. Backman masterfully uses this ambiguity to expose the deeply embedded biases and loyalties within the community. We see how easily perception can be skewed, how quickly truth can be obscured when it clashes with deeply held beliefs.
Yeah, it becomes this fissure that runs through the heart of Beartown. Some people cling to Kevin, unable to reconcile the accusation with the image they have of him, the myth they've built around him.
This speaks to a fascinating psychological phenomenon. The town has invested so much in Kevin, both emotionally and economically, that questioning him becomes akin to questioning their own identity and future.
Yeah, and on the other side of that fissure are those who start to see the cracks, who question the culture of silence that protects the hockey team, regardless of the cost.
These are the individuals who begin to challenge the status quo, the unquestioned authority of the hockey team, and its impact on the town's moral compass. It highlights the tension that often exists between loyalty and justice, between the desire to protect the familiar and the need to confront uncomfortable truths.
It's like the town is forced to look in the mirror and ask, who are we really?
Yeah.
And what are we willing to sacrifice to protect that image?
Precisely. It forces us to examine how deeply intertwined sports can become with a community's sense of identity, even to the point where challenging the sport feels like a threat to the very fabric of their existence.
And within this pressure cooker, the novel explored the complex duality of sports. On the one hand, there's this potential for good teamwork, discipline, camaraderie, all these values we tend to associate with athletics.
But there's also a shadow side to this, isn't there? The potential for exploitation, the pressure to win at all costs, and the way those pressures can warp individual behavior and even justify harmful actions.
We see this most clearly in David, the junior team's coach. He's so driven, so focused on winning, that he sometimes loses sight of the human beings he's coaching.
His character embodies the tension that exists between achieving excellence and maintaining ethical boundaries. He pushes his players relentlessly sometimes to the point of breaking them in pursuit of victory. This raises the question, at what point does the pursuit of success become detrimental to the individual?
It's like he's become so fixated on the destination that he's forgotten the journey, the impact it's having on the young men under his charge.
Yeah.
And then there's Simone, the older, more seasoned coach, who represents a different philosophy altogether.
Soon is a fascinating counterpoint to David. His character embodies a more traditional, perhaps even romanticized view of sportsmanship. He values character development as much as skill development, and he clashes with David's win-at-all-costs approach.
It's almost like he's a relic of a bygone era, someone who still believes in the purity of the game, the inherent value of sports, beyond just winning.
His perspective, while seemingly outdated, offers a critical lens through which to examine the evolution of sports culture. It asks us to consider what's been lost in the pursuit of victory, what compromises have been made in the name of progress.
And these competing philosophies, these clashing values, are reflected in the gut-wrenching choices each character is forced to make.
This is where the novel's psychological depth really shines. It forces us to confront the moral ambiguities inherent in such situations. There are no easy answers, no clear-cut heroes and villains. Every character grapples with their own internal conflicts, their own sense of what's right and wrong.
Amat, for instance, is torn between his loyalty to Kevin and his growing sense of justice. He sees what happened, he knows it's wrong, but he's also deeply indebted to Kevin, his mentor and idol. It's an incredibly complex and agonizing internal struggle.
His dilemma speaks to the powerful influence of role models and how difficult it can be to reconcile admiration with moral objections. It also highlights the courage it takes to speak truth to power, especially when that power is someone you admire and respect.
And there's Peter, the club's general manager, and Maya's father, caught between his duty to the club and his responsibility to protect his daughter.
Peter's conflict embodies the clash between institutional loyalty and personal responsibility. He's a man of principle, but he's also deeply embedded in the hockey culture that has shaped his entire life. The incident with Maya forces him to confront the limitations of that culture and the price of its silence.
And then we have Benji, whose unwavering loyalty to Kevin is tested as the truth begins to surface.
Benji's journey is perhaps the most tragic, as his unwavering loyalty blinds him to the reality of the situation. He clings to the image of Kevin as a hero, unable or unwilling to acknowledge the possibility of his friend's flaws.
It's like he's built his entire world around Kevin, and to question Kevin is to question the very foundation of his own identity. It's heartbreaking to witness.
His struggle is a testament to the power of denial, the way we often cling to comforting narratives, even when they're contradicted by evidence. It also reveals the dangers of hero worship, the way we can elevate individuals to a level where they're immune to scrutiny.
And as these internal struggles play out, we see the ripple effects of the incident on their relationships and on the community as a whole.
Absolutely. The incident acts as a kind of seismic event, exposing the fault lines that were already present beneath the surface of Beartown. Relationships are tested, loyalties are questioned, and the very fabric of the community is threatened. What's fascinating is how this incident with Maya exposes a culture of silence that goes far beyond just protecting the hockey team. It speaks to a broader societal tendency to avoid uncomfortable truths, right? Especially when those truths challenge our deeply held beliefs or threaten those in power.
It's like everyone's walking on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to disrupt the fragile equilibrium of the town.
Exactly. And that silence becomes a breeding ground for complicity. By not speaking up, by not challenging the prevailing narrative, people become complicit in perpetuating the very system that allows these types of incidents to occur.
It's almost like the town itself becomes a character in this story, a collective entity grappling with its own moral compass.
That's a really insightful observation. The town is more than just a backdrop for the character's actions. It's a living, breathing entity with its own history, its own values, and its own capacity for both good and evil.
Yeah, and within this complex ecosystem, we see individuals wrestling with their own sense of right and wrong, trying to navigate these murky waters of loyalty, justice, and truth.
Take Emma, for example. His journey from silent observer to vocal dissenter is incredibly compelling. He's forced to confront this uncomfortable reality that his hero, Kevin, is capable of great harm.
That scene where he testifies at the town meeting is so powerful. You can practically feel the weight of the town's judgment bearing down on him.
His decision to speak out despite the potential repercussions speaks to a profound moral evolution. It highlights the idea that true loyalty isn't about blind allegiance, but about holding those we care about accountable for their actions.
It's a lesson that Benji, despite his unwavering devotion to Kevin, eventually comes to understand, though, through a much more painful path.
Benji's journey is a study in cognitive dissonance. He's confronted with evidence that contradicts his deeply held belief in Kevin's innocence. This creates this tremendous internal conflict, forcing him to either reject the evidence or reevaluate his entire understanding of his friend.
Yeah, it's a classic case of the heart versus the head, and it's not a battle that's easily won.
His eventual break from Kevin while agonizing is a testament to his own growth. He finally recognizes that true friendship requires honesty and accountability even when it's difficult.
It's a painful but necessary step towards reclaiming his own sense of agency and self-worth.
And then there's Peter, whose journey reveals the challenges of reconciling personal values with institutional loyalty. He's torn between protecting his daughter and upholding the reputation of the club that's been his life's work.
His initial attempts to manage the situation internally to minimize the damage to the club are understandable given his position and his history with the town.
His perspective represents a very real dilemma that many people face when confronted with wrongdoing within their own organizations or communities. The desire to protect the institution can often outweigh the need for accountability, especially when that accountability might threaten the status quo.
Yeah, but as the story unfolds, Peter undergoes a profound transformation. He witnesses firsthand the devastating impact of the town's silence, the way it protects the perpetrator at the expense of the victim.
His decision to resign from the club to publicly break ranks with the institution he's been a part of for so long is a pivotal moment in the novel.
It's an act of defiance, a rejection of the idea that winning at all costs is acceptable.
And it speaks to a larger theme of individual accountability. True leadership requires moral courage, a willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it means sacrificing power or status.
And then there's Kira, Peter's wife, and Maya's mother. She approaches the situation from a completely different angle, bringing a lawyer's sharp eye and an unwavering determination to seek justice for her daughter.
Kira's perspective is crucial because she represents a voice that often goes unheard in these situations. She's not swayed by the town's mythology or the pressure to conform. Her focus is on truth and accountability, regardless of the consequences.
She becomes a fierce advocate for Maya, challenging the town's complacency and demanding that they face the ugliness of what's happened.
Her strength and resilience in the face of such adversity are truly inspiring. She embodies the idea that healing can only begin when we acknowledge the truth, however painful it may be.
Yeah, it's like she becomes the conscience of the town, the voice that refuses to be silenced.
And in doing so, she models a different kind of leadership, one that prioritizes empathy, compassion, and a relentless pursuit of justice.
And what about Maya's journey through all of this?
Yeah.
She experiences something truly horrific, and yet she somehow manages to find her own path towards healing.
Maya's story is both heartbreaking and incredibly powerful. She's forced to confront not only the trauma of the assault itself, but also the betrayal of those who choose to protect her abuser rather than believe her.
It would be so easy to become consumed by anger and bitterness, to let the experience define her.
But Maya, despite the immense pain she endures, demonstrates incredible resilience. She finds solace in unexpected places in the support of her mother and in the budding friendship she develops with Amat.
Their bond, forged in the crucible of shared trauma, is one of the most beautiful and hopeful aspects of the novel.
It speaks to the power of human connection, the way we can find strength and solace in each other, even in the darkest of times.
And ultimately, Maya chooses to define herself, not as a victim, but as a survivor. She reclaims her power by refusing to be defined by what happened to her.
That scene where she confronts Kevin in the forest is incredibly powerful. She doesn't seek revenge, but she demands accountability. She forces him to see her, to acknowledge the pain he's caused, and in doing so, she begins to heal.
It's a moment of profound transformation, not just for Maya, but for Kevin as well.
It's a reminder that even in the aftermath of such a horrific event, there's always the possibility of redemption, of growth, and of forgiveness.
And as we move into the final part of this deep dive, I want to focus on those glimmers of hope, those moments where characters choose to act with courage and integrity, even when it means challenging the status quo. Because ultimately, those are the seeds of change, the possibilities for a different future.
I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our conversation, because despite the darkness and the complexities of the situation, Beartown does offer us glimpses of a brighter future, moments that suggest that even deeply entrenched systems can be challenged, and that individual choices can have a ripple effect, creating a more just and compassionate world.
We've talked about all the darkness that just permeates Beartown, the weight of expectations, the struggle for justice, and these individual journeys the characters take as they navigate this incredibly complex landscape. But amidst all of that, there are these glimmers of hope. Where do you see those emerging?
One of the most striking examples, I think, is embodied in Jeanette, the teacher who starts a martial arts club. In a town that's so consumed by hockey, she offers this alternative path, a different way to explore strength, discipline, and community.
It's like she's creating a counter-narrative, right?
Yeah.
A space where that win-at-all-costs mentality of hockey isn't the only way to, like, define worth or success.
Precisely. And it's significant that her club attracts kids from all walks of life, some who felt marginalized or disillusioned by that hyper-competitive world of hockey. It suggests a hunger for something different, a yearning for a community that values individuals for who they are, not just for their athletic prowess.
Yeah, it's a powerful statement, especially considering how deeply ingrained the culture of Beartown is. And it's not just Jeanette who embodies this spirit of resistance. We see it in other characters, too.
Absolutely. Ramona, the bar owner, emerges as an unexpected but fiercely protective figure. She's seen it all, heard it all, and she's not afraid to call out injustice, even when it means going against the grain.
She's a fascinating character because she's full of contradictions. She's tough, cynical, but also possesses this deep-seated sense of fairness and a willingness to defend those who are vulnerable.
Yeah, her actions demonstrate a very particular kind of moral courage. The kind that doesn't always come with accolades or recognition. She acts on instinct, driven by a visceral sense of right and wrong.
And her presence in the novel is so important because she represents a force that exists outside that established power structure of the town. She operates according to her own code, and that makes her a powerful agent of change.
And let's not forget Maya. Despite this horrific experience she endures, she emerges from the darkness with incredible strength and resilience. She could easily succumb to despair, allowed the trauma to define her, but she doesn't.
That scene where she confronts Kevin in the forest is so pivotal. It's not about revenge, but about reclaiming her agency, demanding acknowledgement of the pain he's caused.
It's a crucial step in her healing process, a way of taking back control after having so much taken from her. And it's also a moment of growth for Kevin, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions.
Their interaction, while incredibly tense and emotional, highlights the potential for transformative change, even in the most challenging circumstances. It suggests that healing is possible both for individuals and for communities, but it requires honesty, accountability, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths.
And it's in those moments of individual courage, those acts of resistance against the prevailing tide, that we see the possibility for a different future for Beartown. It's not a guaranteed outcome, but it's a glimmer of hope, a suggestion that change is possible even in a place so deeply entrenched in its own traditions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Beartown, I'm left with this sense of both profound sadness, but also this cautious optimism. The novel doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions, but it does leave us with a powerful message about the importance of individual choice, the complexities of justice, and that enduring strength of the human spirit. What's your final takeaway?
I think Backman masterfully captures this nuanced reality of how communities respond to trauma. He doesn't shy away from the difficult questions or those messy truths. He forces us to confront our own biases, our own complicity, and our own capacity for both harm and healing. And in doing so, he reminds us that change, while often slow and painful, is always possible. It starts with individual choices, with a willingness to speak up, to challenge the status quo, and to build a world where empathy and justice prevail.
It's a powerful message to carry with us, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always the possibility for light to emerge. And that's where I think the true power of Beartown lies, in its ability to provoke thought, to spark conversations, and to inspire us to create a world where stories like Maya's are no longer necessary.
Yeah.